Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dr. Serge, and welcome to another episode of Search for the Truth. And today I'm really excited to have Miss Debbie with us. Hi, Debbie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Good, and thank you for taking the time to be with us on a Friday afternoon. First of all, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You have a really fascinating journey. Can you tell us about you and what you've come through?
Sure. About 10 years ago, I started navigating some health issues. So I started having some physical pain in my body that was interfering with my life, and finally decided to get some help for that. And that sort of began this long journey of navigating autoimmune disease diagnosis and treatment until at one point I was on like 7 to 9 different prescription medications a day, 3 times a day, and feeling terrible still. And so I slowly began to take back my power with my health, like one step at a time, working on my nutrition, working on the way I moved my body, trying to eliminate toxicities in my environment. And eventually I had this conversation with my rheumatologist that led me to think, if I stepped away from my job, I had a 14-year career in teaching. If I walked away from my job, I thought I would eliminate my stress, and like that would be the magic bullet that would, solve all my problems. And what I found after leaving my job was just myself in this deep, dark hole. And so the work I did from that point on was kind of trying to claw myself out of that darkness, trying to like break cycles for my own daughters and not create new ones, until eventually, as I worked on my mental, emotional health, I could feel the physical pain in my body start to lessen and eventually leave. And so I couldn't deny that relationship any longer. And that kind of just kept me going down that road until, I'm here where I am today. So that's kind of the quick answer to that question.
Okay, thank you for that. So one of the main challenges that I see with people, I mean, you do nutrition, I do nutrition, and it's to take the first step. It's really challenging for a lot of people, actually. A lot of them do know they need to do something about their health issues, but they don't know what to do, or they are afraid to take the first step. So what can you tell them? What can you recommend for them to actually be strong enough and do what they need to do to get better?
This is tricky, right? There's so many messages that are mixed, confusing. Our doctors might give us one bit of advice. We are giving ourselves a different kind of messaging, like based on our own coping mechanisms and those things. And so it's tricky to like get through all of that, whatever that noise, and try to find the truth for yourself. So what I can say is, I think my body was whispering to me for a long time that I needed to seek some kind of help or make some kind of change. And I didn't listen to it until it was really screaming, right? So I ignored it for a long time. And then, finally, after I had given away all my power to like people with MD after their name, it kind of took someone else in my life that was supportive enough to encourage me to try to do things on my own. I was getting a different message from my doctors than maybe I believe is true now. I was hearing like, this is what your body is going to be like. This is what's going to happen. You don't have a lot of control over it. And I believe something different now, but it took someone else in my life to sort of support and encourage me. And I'm grateful for that now. So I guess, in retrospect, what I would say to someone that's struggling is like, seek out help, right? Ask for help from someone that you trust. That doesn't have to be a doctor. Like all of our answers are not found in a diagnosis or a prescription, but we do need connection. We do need love and support. And so ask for that, seek that out. If you're feeling something is going on or you're lacking in some way.
That's a very good point, especially in a case like you, right? You were diagnosed with a chronic autoimmune disease. And I'm sure when you heard that from your doctor, you were floored. And I'm
Mm,
sure it took you a while to process that information. And oftentimes in those situations, there's a feeling of helplessness, right? You don't feel there's any hope.
mhm.
So
Yeah.
how did you go through this and really get out of this dark time?
Yes. Well, that's a good question. What what I began to discover is that I had never dealt with this trauma that happened earlier in my life, and I was really good at repressing my emotions. And so the way that I had dealt with that is to continually ramp up my perfectionism and this people pleasing thing. So that was how I coped for so many years. And that was how I went through life until I found myself in this really dark place where I didn't know anything else to do, right? I had tried everything I thought I could, and still I was sick and in pain, and I didn't know what else to do. And so, luckily for me, I did go to like a holistic practitioner that did some somatic work on me. So she just used the cues my body was giving to sort of make that connection between this trauma that I had never really let myself like heal from, and the physical pain in my body. And then there was more work to do there, but just being able to become conscious of that allowed me to see that I was using perfectionism and people pleasing um, in a lot of ways. So that all the healing I was doing before that, right, like with food,
Yeah.
I was just over controlling it until I was almost just limiting my diet too much, or exercise. I would overdo it until it was like a punishing extent. And so until I could come to terms with these coping mechanisms and learn to move past them, I couldn't really use any methods of healing in a loving, nurturing way for my body, which is what it needed, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it was the help of a practitioner that helped me see that relationship, and then just continuing to step toward that and let go of my own coping mechanisms, my ways of numbing. Everyone has that's been through that probably has some way of numbing or coping that may be harming them and not helping them any longer. So it took an awareness of that for me to get past it.
I think it's a really common way to cope with trauma. I mean, I hear sometimes that 70% of our issues come from our mind, our emotions, our traumas, our past. And a lot of people don't make the connections between the
Mm.
two.
Yeah. I think sometimes we might feel like someone saying it's all in your mind. At
Yeah.
least I could speak for myself. Um, which is true, right? Where it's all connected. There's like no separating it. And so sometimes we might take that as like an invalidation of that this isn't real. It's just in your
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
The truth is, the effects on your nervous system, the chemicals and hormones that are released because you're in like this trauma state you've never dealt with, are vast and very real and very chronic, and so there's no denying that that is real. It's just needing to get to the bottom of that to truly heal, I think, in my opinion.
Good point. And I think one of the issue coming from that is a lot of medical doctors do not seem to believe the patient's symptoms,
Mm,
like fibromyalgia or those chronic issues, and they put them on antidepressants and they send them home, and it's all in their mind, in their head.
yeah.
I think there's a lot of confusion when it comes to that, but you're right. There's a connection with the mind and the body, right?
Hmm.
And you wrote a book on this topic.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit more about this really connections? Because a lot of people don't really know or aware that the mind really have a major impact on how the body feels.
Sure. Well, I kind of alluded to that in my previous answer, but something that would have been helpful to me, I think, earlier in my process of diagnosis and trying to heal. Though, you know what they say, like when the student's ready, the teacher appears. So who knows? This was my path. That is what it is. But later on, I started to read the works of Bessel van der Kolk in When the Body Says No. And I'm sorry, Bessel van der Kolk wrote The Body Keeps the Score. And then another doctor, Gabor Mate, wrote something When the Body Says No. And these were really clear books that showed a lot of medical evidence of certain personality types. So those that like repress their emotions, and also those who have been through trauma and never processed it or healed from it, and what chronic illnesses correlate to that later in life. And so that really helped me see this connection between the mind and the body that I had already experienced through going to that holistic practitioner, right? When she did some somatic work on me. But at that time, it felt very mystical and magical. And I'm totally okay with that now. Like, you could give me a placebo. If I heal, I'm fine with it, right? There's a lot of good evidence for the placebo effect. So if it's mystical and magical, that works for me too, if I feel better. But what these two doctors have shown is that just what I said about our nervous system and just getting in this habitual fight or flight mode rather than, being most often in rest, digest, heal mode. And so when we're commonly releasing those hormones in fight or flight mode, which we're never meant to have like for a sustained period of time, we're causing a lot of stress to our body, to our heart, to our lungs, to our nervous system, whatever it is. And so over time, that will catch up with us. And in many ways, it happens through autoimmune disease or other chronic heart and lung conditions. And so doing that work, reading that, and also reading a lot about the power of journaling to heal, and release trauma and repressed emotions, all of that kind of working at the same time, learning to calm my nervous system and journaling to heal. And those kind of converged into this book that tells that story of how I went down that path and discovered that my past was very much related to where I found myself in that present dark moment. And then how I was able to come out of that, hopefully helping anyone else that might find themselves in the same place.
So how did you handle the past trap emotions? Did you use specific techniques or use the tools? You mentioned journaling, but anything else?
Yeah. So definitely a lot of things that our nervous system, right? We feel like we don't have a lot of control over it. So I can't tell my heart, like, I want you to beat this many times per minute, or I can't control my blood pressure just mentally by telling my body what to do, but I can control my breath. I can do a lot of things that bring me down and calm my nervous system. A lot of what people with autoimmune disease, chronic illness struggle with are so commonly our digestive systems are just out of whack. And we wonder, like, why is that? But our nervous system is out of whack too, right? So a lot of what I did was first to calm my nervous system, which was meditating. I mentioned that I was kind of exercising to a punishing extent. And so I learned how to do other kinds of exercise like yoga, which felt excruciating at first. I read that there was a lot of evidence for journaling and healing. And so I started doing that, like I said, and then seeking out true connection, right? So my connections mostly before that had been based on this perfectionist, people-pleasing tendency. And so I learned to be vulnerable and authentic. Not that I lied before, but I just wasn't deeply honest with my emotions and what I was going through. And so I found people that I could connect with and talk that through with and process it. I also just let myself finally feel emotions that I had denied for so long. So I would like play a song that helped me release the anger that I had finally been feeling. I never really let myself be angry. I was always like positive, forgive, and move on. So I learned to look at my emotions from like a higher perspective, not like trying to judge or change, just noticing them. And I actually let them be until it's not really scary because they will move on and move through you, right? I didn't have to change them, but I finally started feeling those. And so those are some of the things. I don't know if I answered your question completely, but
No, I think so. And I think you have a really good point. It's really important to reconnect ourselves with our emotions, right? Because we are so busy these days, we don't take the time to
mhm.
process everything we need to do. I'm sure, based on my experience, someone who has been diagnosed with a chronic issues, um, you've been doing a lot of research a lot different things. So, what do you think is the main cause or causes of these autoimmune issues? Because it seems to be pandemic.
Yeah. Um, that's a big question that feels hard to answer, right? But I think
Yeah,
that we tell ourselves lies. We're like so used to saying, I'm so busy. I have to do this, right? We fill up
yeah,
our calendar, we fill up our day. We get a lot of I guess our ego gets a lot out of us being busy, right? That's like a thing we say now that's I'm too busy, I can't do that. And we don't really question that story we tell ourselves. And we don't even often ask ourselves if that's what we truly want, if that's really aligned with our values and desires and needs. And so anytime we're doing that or telling ourselves a story that isn't true, we're triggering our nervous system, just like I had said. And so I think that is part of it. I certainly know part of it for me was um, experiencing these traumatic events and then being afraid to ever name them or deal with them or talk to anyone about them. And so that just kind of stays trapped. And your body remembers it, right? In those ways that I was saying, your nervous system remembers. And so your nervous system can't function the way that it's meant to. And so I think those are all parts of it. I think that there are definitely like toxicities in the things that we put in our bodies and on our bodies now more so than we much more processed food than we ever have. We don't grow our food anymore, and I'm not trying to say that's bad or good, but that probably has some effect on our body. And so I think it's probably a combination of those things and different for different people, but in general as a society, at least here in the US, there is this story of like, I have to be busy, I have to do everything, I have to do it all well. Just not being able to slow down or take a breath or really evaluate what's meant for you and not just what society tells us is meant for us. So
good point. And we know from what you said that the mind has a really profound effect on our health. So, what about the physical side? You mentioned
mhm.
toxicity. Have you done something specific to help the body physically? Have you done some cleanses? Did you look at
Mm.
nutritional deficiencies, food sensitivities, and so on?
Definitely. So I've done several different elimination diets and then tried adding back in. I've done some allergy tests and the findings of all of those are so surprising, right? Like I lived on bread and cheese, two things I don't eat anymore because my body can't tolerate them. And so those things have been very beneficial for sure and can also be done, free of charge, which is one thing I like. Like I could do an elimination diet and add things in slowly to see what my body can handle and can't. And I don't need anyone's permission. It doesn't cost anything more than just my regular groceries. So that is one thing. I've definitely done some digging into like the chemicals that are in foods and in the products we use in our household and on our bodies, and the effects those have on our endocrine system or on our hormones. And so I've tried to eliminate toxicities in those ways. I think that I'm still on a couple of medications for my autoimmune diseases. And so those are toxic already. That bears a toxic load for my body. And
Yeah.
I want to do everything I can to help my body not have to work so hard. Right. And so, yeah, as much as I can, I eat a very plant-based, nutrient-rich diet. And that's kind of been my focus. But everyone is different, right? I do
Yeah.
believe that. And so I would never say like this is what everyone should eat and everyone should do. Um, yes. And then another thing I think that happens with people with chronic illness and autoimmune diseases, they're tired, they feel bad, and it becomes this really difficult cycle of being able to get up and move your body when your body hurts and you're really tired. And sometimes we feel disempowered in that way, as though we're going to harm ourselves further if we move our body or our body can't handle it. And so I feel really lucky that I have a cardiologist that's very, like he really says you need to get your heart rate up 30 minutes a day every day. And it doesn't matter that I have lung and heart conditions. That's still going to help my body no matter what. Right. And so I've learned to do that in a loving way, not in like a really over controlling or overdoing it way. And I try to listen to my body and do what feels best for my body in the moment. But I've learned that that helps support my joints. It helps support my lungs and my heart. And my body is really capable of a lot more than I might have given it credit for sure. So those are really important pieces of the puzzle for me.
And it seems that your approach is really holistic, right? So people are a bit confused, or sometimes they think it's a bit voodoo, it's a bit odd when we talk about holistic. So what does that mean exactly? Can you help us a bit what holistic means when it comes to health?
Sure. Well, I'm certainly not like, Mr. Webster's dictionary or anything, but to me, it means that, first of all, that connection between my mind and my body, that there's really no separating that. And there was no healing for me until I discovered that. And then no one's like the bad guy or the good guy here, right? I have a cardiologist, a rheumatologist, a pulmonologist. I'm so grateful for them, for the tests that they were able to do, for the medications they were able to help me find that, are as low as they can be, but help my body function in a proper way. And so I'm grateful for them. And at the same time, I know there's a lot I can control in my environment that really helps my body do the job that it was made to do. And so I do that as much as I can, which is really supporting my mind and my spirit first, right? My soul, and then supporting my physical body how I can through food and movement and those things I said, like eliminating toxicities, really working on calming my nervous system as much as I can. Like noticing those stories in my mind that are often lies, that like becoming aware of that and moving to another place, a different story that I want to write that's better for my life for sure.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the last couple of months or year, I would say a year and a half, we've been living in that fear.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. It's really ridiculous. So what can you say about this? What can you tell people how to handle this fear? Because like you said earlier, it does impact your adrenals. You're on that fight or flight, it affects your nervous system, and it affects everything else. So how do you cope with this fear that it seems to be constant?
Yeah. Oh man. And it's very real. So I would never
Yeah.
want to like tell someone, to deny it or pretend it's not there, right? That's
Yes.
the opposite. That's just how we stuff it and it kind of gets stuck. So first I would just say acknowledge it. And then, as much as you can, in any respect, fear over this pandemic that's been going on or anything else, becoming the noticer rather than the judger, I think lets us move to a place of awareness rather than unconscious behaviors. So if I notice there's a fear, and I don't try to change it or suppress it or deny it, I'm just the noticer, then I can really notice those loops that are going on in my mind, which might be like, this is going to happen to me, or I can't do this because of this, and so once I notice them, I can kind of detach from them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe less specific to the pandemic, but detaching from those stories in my mind sound more like, I am not my body. I am not my diagnosis. I am not my, what I am not my illness. I am not my mom or my dad. In this case, it might be like, I am not, destined to get this disease, whatever it is, and then you can write a new story based from that place of detachment. So what do I want the story to be? What can I control, rather than focusing on the things outside of my control? What is within my nexus of control, and then how can I write a better story based on that? So I don't, I as much as I can still get outside, I get outside. As much as I can seek a healthy connection with human beings, I still seek a healthy connection with human beings. I think those are very fundamental things to our health. And so I would tell anyone that's struggling to find connection in whatever way they can. Like, this way is just as good, right? A deep,
Yeah.
true connection. And beyond that, do what you can to take care of your body now, in the place you are, where you're at, right? Not like, oh, when the pandemic's over, I will, or, oh, when I can do this, I will. Do the best you can from where you're at right now. And you'll probably feel a lot better if you're taking care of your body, and connecting with people. And maybe, if it's possible, getting outside and moving around a little bit. What would you say? I want to know, what's your advice to people that are really in fear mode and struggling with the pandemic?
A little bit like you just said, I typically recommend take the moment, take a break, try to disconnect from the reality of what's going on, and think about what if it makes sense or not to you. And if it will, you just accept the fact that that's what it is. And then me, I'm, like you said, I'm a big fan of journaling. I recommend people journal. Go outside, read a book, dance, listen to music, get your mind distracted from what's going on outside. That's what I have been doing for a little while now, is because it was getting too overwhelming for myself and dealing with those patients and those people. So I had to disconnect from this pandemic, right? So, which actually I realized that my body started to feel better. All that pressure came off my shoulders. It's really amazing what the mind can do. Which is my next point, actually. I wanted to ask you your opinion about this, because you mentioned the placebo effect. A placebo effect is you believe that it's going to help, and it does help, right? In a nutshell. But what about the nocebo effect, the other way around? So do you feel that the mind can actually create a disease in the body? Is that something possible?
What I know from what I've read and what I believe to be true is that our mind doesn't know the difference between the truth and a lie. It just knows what it tells us, right? So if maybe I'm feeling like in danger because I just listened to a news broadcast, but my body is going to perceive that the same way it would like a lion running after me, right? And
Yeah.
so that's why it's so good to come to a place of awareness and then move forward from there, I think. So yes, I do believe that, not in a way to like shame anyone that's struggling with their health at all, but just in
Yes.
a way to know that our mind is very powerful and our body responds based on what our mind tells us in the same way, right? And so once I learned that, I really understood how important it was to do these things like journal and meditate and do the things that would calm my body down, and then come to a place of awareness on what was true and what is a lie in my mind. So I certainly do, and I don't want to say it to shame anyone. We're all like on a journey
Yeah.
of our own health, and we'll arrive where we arrive. But I feel empowered by that now, rather than the other way around. Right? I get to control my future. I get to decide where my body takes me and how it heals. Certainly there is damage that's been done to my body that will continue to exist. I can't go back and like regrow cartilage, but yeah, I can move forward from a much more empowered place, I believe, knowing that. Yeah.
It's really beautiful what you just said.
Thank you.
Nice, thank you. So our time is already up. It's crazy how time flies. So, what would you say as a final note for to people who got diagnosed with chronic issues and they feel there's no hope for them?
Mm.
I see that so often, and it's really unfortunate because there's so much out there, but a lot of people don't see it. They don't know it. They don't realize it. So, what would be something you would tell them?
I think I want to tell them so most recently, after I thought I was like on the right track, getting better, everything was good, I was diagnosed with something called pulmonary hypertension, which is high blood pressure in the lungs. I already had some lung issues, so these were being monitored, and that can cause heart failure fairly quickly, right? And so I acquired a cardiologist, so a new doctor based on that. And the first time I went in to see him, he got out a piece of paper and he said, "I'm going to write you a prescription." And I was kind of rolling my eyes inside because I was like, "Oh, I don't want another prescription. That's not why I'm here." But he wrote down 4 things. And the first was nutrition. So he recommends a plant-based vegan diet. I mean, I've already said I think everyone is different, but I would definitely think you can help your body by what you put into your body.
Yeah.
Movement. So like get your heart rate up for 30 minutes a day. But then he really surprised me. The third thing he wrote was love and connection. And since then, I've dug into all of these things, and he recommended these things because they are at least as effective as any medication he could ever have prescribed to me. There's mountains of research on all 4 of the things he wrote down, including love and connection. So when we have a lack of connection in our life, we're so much more likely to die early and to die of a chronic illness. And the 4th thing he wrote was mental health. And I had already been working on this, but he looked me in the eyes and he goes, "I don't just mean like meditate or do yoga." He said, "I mean, find the rug, pick up the rug, and sweep everything out from under the rug." Does that expression make sense to you? That's like, a very American expression, like you're
Yeah.
sweeping things under the rug. And that was very empowering too. These were all 4 things I could work on my own without the help of a doctor, without a prescription. And they are all widely researched, and very valuable. So I would say if you're struggling, if you're feeling hopeless, work on one of those 4 things first, whichever one speaks to you most, whichever one you feel you can access easiest, and then kind of go down that list and know there is hope. There is something you can do. This is not, a static place where you're stuck.
Yeah.
It's very dynamic, your health, and you can move forward.
Well said. Your story is so inspiring. It's really, really beautiful. So, how can people reach out to you if they need some help or have any questions? Because oftentimes in cases like that, they don't know where to start.
Sure. I would love to connect with anyone that would like to. I hang out on Instagram under imperfectprogress.me. So that's the letter I, the letter M, and then perfectprogress.me. You can go to gobucketyourself.com and you can email me from there or see what kind of work we're doing there. And if you want to find the book, you can go it's called The Other Side of Perfect, Discovering the Mind-Body Connection to Healing Chronic Illness. You can find that anywhere you buy books online, or you can go to gobucketyourself.com/books and we'll take you there. We'll help you find it. But yeah, I'd love to connect. Anyone that would like to reach out to me, I will definitely get back in touch with you.
Awesome. Thank you, Debbie, for your time. It was really, really fascinating. And I will let you go. And thank you guys for watching.
Thank you so much. This was my pleasure.
Thank you.